Actually,
Okay.
right now, our special guest, Niko House, who is the co-founder and host of JustNForm. He's also the CEO and founder of Mi Casa Su Casa. He's also political analysis and activist. He'll be joining us in just a little bit. So we're going to take a quick break. And we are back here at Zacuto Studios. I'm joined here today with Rebecca Mara, Daniel Lupker, and our special guest, Niko House. Niko, thank you so much for joining Hard Lens Media.
Hey, kid, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. What's going on, guys?
So I think it's very important for all our viewers and subscribers to understand really what's happening in Florida. You have been a powerful, active voice in the progressive community. You've been really holding the Democratic establishment accountable for its years of corruption and continuing corruption that's happening. And right now, let's actually talk about a race that still leaves a lot of open wounds, especially for 2016, and that's the race between Tim Canova and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Apparently, after November 6th, there's been a lot of voter discrepancy. There's been a lot of accusations towards the Democratic Party, as well as the votes being lost, ballots being misplaced, private cars being used to transfer ballots. What's the whole story that's happening with that race right now? Is Tim Canova actually getting a fair trial in regards for the voter recount? What's the real story there?
Well, I'll just go on record and say I don't believe he's getting a fair trial as far as the voter recount. And I think that the recount itself is being used as a distraction. The whole notion of, oh, we need to count every single vote is a distraction because let's be very frank and very clear. Every vote is not being counted based off of what we've seen from the official Broward County website, from the official website for District 23. In fact, the more votes that have been turned in, the more votes that have been found, that vote tally for the entire race, it gets lower and lower the more votes that have been found. Just as an example, they started out with 264,000 ballots. When I went back 2 days later, it was 251,000 ballots. Now, this is after the video got released with the POV, the personal vehicles, bringing in ballots without having anybody to hold them accountable, nobody with them. The ballot situation works on kind of like a buddy system to make sure that they're not tampering with anything. They were mixing ballots together at a single precinct. And I mean, I don't have to guess this. A volunteer who also happened to be a fan of my show asked, and the volunteers oftentimes who are helping out with the election, they don't know what they're doing. They're doing what they're told. So they're like casually, yeah, these are from other precincts, but that's illegal.
It's the same thing as well as having a personal POV actually, drop, ballots at a location in which they'd be counted. I mean, that's really illegal as well. And not to mention, there's also been reports of people close to Debbie Wasserman Schultz that have been trying to be, be officially in charge of making sure there's a fair system. I know that some people are right now being held accountable for corruption, and some people are stepping down.
Okay.
What's the story behind that?
So essentially, Brenda Snipes, I believe, is who you're referring to as far as people being close to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Brenda Snipes already admitted in federal court that when she was subpoenaed for ballots, she destroyed them. Now, mind you, this is what's probably the weirdest part about that entire situation that no one really discussed, but it wasn't just Tim Canova's and Debbie Wasserman Schultz's ballots who were destroyed in that race. That means every single one of Bernie Sanders' ballots potentially, or Hillary Clinton, if they voted for her, were also destroyed in that same race. That means there are over 250,000 ballots that are unaccounted for that could have swayed the election either one way or the other for Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. So, and no one wants to discuss that. And what bothers me the most about all this is we know Brenda Snipes is a criminal, and yet we keep hearing recount. And I say that it's a distraction because we always hear recount, but we never hear accountability. We never hear this person. Why are we allowing the same ones who rigged the election to begin with to do the recounts? We know what the result is going to be. We know in Broward County, there were 800,000 people who voted in total. So you're going to convince me that in an election that would determine their district's representative, that only 250,000 people voted for their District 23 congressperson, and so the rest just sat out of the election? Come on. And no one wants to talk about that. Rick Scott's trying to make this a duopolis issue, as in a partisan issue, trying to say that it's the Democrats trying to rig it for the Democrats. He already won his race. And then you have the left trying to say, the Democrats specifically trying to say, oh, there's a massive voter suppression. To be honest with you, I don't think the voter suppression affected the election that much. What I believe affected the election more than anything else was Broward County, because Broward County always affects the elections in Florida more than anything else. And I think that everybody knows that by now. And so until we start hearing about accountability and repercussions for election fraud, we're going to consistently see this type of behavior. We're going to consistently see progressives like Stacey Abrams and Tim Canova be on the receiving end of election fraud. And while attorney generals our secretary of states of various states, like in Georgia, are in charge of elections, and Brenda Snipes and people like her are going unpunished, what kind of democracy are we really living in?
So I just want to ask, how do you think this is going to affect the 2020 election? So you saw what happened in 2016. You've brought up what happens in 2016. Do you see things being different, the same? How do you see Florida? Florida is obviously insanely important for the presidential election.
Yeah, and also to add on to that too, is there any kind of movement to really bring true transparency to Broward County? Because if it really impacts the Florida election that much, it seems quite clear that there needs to be a movement to really bring true voter accountability to that area.
They should be disqualified if they're caught cheating. That would be accountability.
Yeah. All right, so
disqualified is an understatement. Brenda Snipes should actually, according to federal law, state law, and municipality law, she should be in jail.
Yeah.
So, but there is a movement that has been brewing consistently since 2016, and we're getting closer and closer. We're reacting quicker and quicker. There are mechanisms that have been put in place to try to get accountability and try to get fair results, more fair. Like I said, at the end of the day, only 250,000 people voted in that particular race, and we're basing our investigations right now already off of cooked up numbers. Mm-hmm. You're not going to convince me that 800. I mean, these are the numbers according to Broward County's website. 800,000 people voted in District 23, but 250,000 people voted in their race. So we definitely need more radical transparency. This is not something I plan on letting die anytime soon, especially because even though I'm not going to be running for office in Broward County, I will be running for office in Florida, and I refuse to allow myself to be beaten for any reason other than the candidate was better than mine and the people chose who they chose. And it's not because of me, but it's because I just cannot stand the idea of people's voices getting, people have a lot to do. They have to take their kids to school. They have to go to work. A lot of us are working 2 or 3 jobs, which is why we're so engaged in the voting process now. And every vote that is thrown out, that is handed to I don't even believe a lot of these ballots are being counted in Florida. I believe that that's why Brenda Snipes destroyed them. Because if you look at the counts, they probably wouldn't even come close to matching up. So that means people are literally wasting their time. They're pre-programming these computers using what's called fraction magic to divvy up a certain amount of votes, based off of whatever arbitrary number they select. And I believe that's what they did to Tim Canova. And based off the research on fraction magic, that's exactly what it looked like they did.
So I'm actually going to open a wound that a lot of people have been talking about, especially those who are really critical of the Democratic Party. This blue wave that hit this country in 2018, the aftermath of November 6th, we saw a large voter turnout, and in many areas, some of them went from Republican to Democrat. Do you think the Democratic Party is really capable of, really embracing the progressive left, or will they go back to their original ways, which is just basically holding on to power and just hoping that, they get their more preferred candidates?
Let me add in one more term in that, and let me say, do you think that the progressive movement is I think all of us would agree that the Democratic Party, the establishment party, is never going to just take control, we're fine with it. Do you see the progressive movement making gains? I've always seen it as a beachhead that they've made so far. Do you see that beachhead being established that will be expanded in 2020?
So I will say, I wouldn't call it a blue wave, and I want to be very clear about that because the blue wave is an establishment term.
Right.
What we saw in the House was something that I didn't even see coming, which was the only reason that the Democrats were able to flip the House was because a large amount of progressives were elected. Progressives who, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we would have thought never had a chance, especially like the Somalian woman who won in Minnesota. Like
I love
that
her.
was insane to me. I couldn't believe that she won because people don't know there's a huge refugee crisis, and Minnesota is like the epicenter of that. Minnesota, Vermont, New Hampshire has a lot of refugees. If you go into Minnesota right now, go to the Minneapolis airport, it's full of Somalians. So they do need to be accurately represented. And she didn't campaign on anything but the issues. She didn't say I'm Muslim. She didn't say I'm Somalian. She campaigned on the same issues where she did Tlaib campaigned on, and the same issues that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez campaigned on. And those issues that are progressive issues, those are the issues of the people. Damn right and left, damn Republican and Democrat. These issues are the issues. Medicare for all affects you, black, white, woman, or man, right? The military-industrial complex, same thing. We are all tired of the identity politics on the right and the left. We're tired of the sound bites on the right and the left. And people think that just because we're paying hyper attention to it, that we're the only ones who care about it. No, I talk to people daily who are all tired of it. They just want to hear for the once. Can someone be genuine and can someone address the issues? If you can do those two things, a lot of the time, they're going to check the box for you because more often than not, the people who are going to win you an election aren't in that Democratic camp or the Republican camp. They're in the independent camp.
Right.
And I want to add in one thing very quickly that you can see a lot of examples of that with ballot initiatives. You can go to right-wing, quote-unquote, right-wing areas. You can go to, quote-unquote, left-wing areas. They all vote for the progressive ballot measures.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Yeah,
we're also seeing
that happened. Our revolution got a punch pass.
Yeah, and we're also seeing a huge movement of people embracing the idea of third parties entering into our electoral system. Now, of course, it should be noted that various states have draconian laws towards third parties actually being on the ballot. Here in Illinois, we got it pretty bad. Myself and Daniel have covered many third-party candidates, Greens and Libertarians, trying to be on the ballot, and usually for the most part, they usually get pushed aside, or if they do get on the ballot, they have very little time to actually, reach out to potential voters. So my question I want to ask you is this, is that eventually down the road, do you see third parties actually making a political impact here in the United States and actually having at least some sort of foothold into our political system?
So this is the last thing I'll say because I do have to go. But
Right.
I will say that we should not be focusing on party politics. Excuse me. That's what I would say. Tim Canova's race exposed another dark vein in our society, which is that when you are trying to compete with the duopoly, they will crush you to make it seem like they made, like Tim Canova had 25,000 votes, and we know that he probably had more in the 2016 election. So he runs the independent in the general election where everyone would generally get more votes, and now he has 12,900.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes no sense. What that exemplifies is that we need to be doing what you were just speaking on. Third parties need to be focusing on ballot initiatives, because if you don't have automatic ballot access in every state, if you're not talking about ranked choice voting in every state, if you're not getting automatic access to the base state based off the number of party members you have nationally versus in your state, like if you go to Alabama, how many Democrats are in Alabama right now? Probably more Green Party members are in Michigan than there are Democrats in Alabama, and yet the Democrats don't have to fight to get on the debate stage in Alabama. They don't have to fight to get automatic ballot access in Alabama. So why is that rule? Why are they an exception to that rule in those type of situations, but the Green Party has to still fight to get on ballots in Michigan? It's because of duopoly, and we can solve those problems by passing ballot initiatives. But I thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Real quick, one final question. Where can our viewers and subscribers learn more about you, find you on social media?
Go to MCSC Network. MCSC Network with Niko House on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at Niko Niko CSFB, and also you can find us on Roku. We are the first independent news network on Roku, so you can definitely find us there as well.
All right, Niko, thank you so much. All the best to you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Personally, I want to thank the professional staff here at Zacuto Studios. Zacuto is actually a local Chicago studio here. It was founded by two Chicago filmmakers. It's been around for 20 years. They do a lot of great work here. Please check them out online and check out their website, check out what they do and what they offer. It's a fantastic place, and this was a very rare opportunity for us to be here. I want to thank Paul DuPont, Rebecca Mara, Daniel Lupker, as well as our special guest, Niko House. If you want to learn more about Heartlands Media, check out our website, heartlandsmedia.com. And if you want to support independent media, we have a Patreon page. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. Peace, everyone, and let us all do what we can to build a better future.
You're watching Hard Lens Media.